Hey guys, welcome. This is Brad Krantz. Thank you for joining me today on my Monday leadership. Today I've got a special guest with me that's going to join me here shortly. He's a second generation business owner. He's also a new Republican legislator for House District 11 here in Montana. So he's taken some leadership statewide. He's also now vying for the top leadership role in Montana politics, that of governor. So leadership there. He's running for governor against our current incumbent, Greg Gianforte. So I want to welcome Tanner Smith joining me today.
Thank you, Brad.
Tanner, thanks so much for joining me, man. I appreciate it. You got a busy schedule. You've been all over the state recently, so.
I have, yeah. We had Glendive this week, Great Falls, Lincoln Reagan Trump dinner. So we're hitting all the spots, all the hot spots. You bet.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for sitting with me here today. So you're kind of taking on some leadership here. Just maybe a little bit about you, but what are some of the influences that you've had in your life, and what motivates you to do what you're doing?
Well, probably my greatest influence was my father. You know, he was my role model. I adored that man.
Okay.
And I saw through his leadership with the family, and then he was also chairman of the board for Stevensville High School growing up. So that's what we do, is lead. If we see there's a problem, then by George, we take the bull by the horns and we fix things.
Okay.
That's what prompted me to run for the legislature.
Okay.
We had that marijuana dispensary when next to our school.
Right.
So I said, I've got to step into this role and lead. Same way with the masks. That's what got me on the school board before my legislative run. And now, after two weeks in the legislature, I told my peers I've got to be governor because this place is a mess.
Yeah.
Under Gianforte's leadership, he's not a conservative.
Okay.
And we saw bills coming out that he was killing. It was good legislation. There was 27 bills that we passed that were good conservative Republican bills that he vetoed.
Okay.
In a lot of those bills, a lot of the issues we're seeing today in Montana are because he vetoed those bills.
Okay.
Whether it's parental rights, the meth, the fentanyl crisis we're seeing, the homelessness crisis.
Okay.
We had bills to address all this stuff, and he just wants the status quo and the chaos.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to maybe jump back a little bit on this, but what leads you, or what's led you to decide to challenge our incumbent for governor? I mean, that's a big task, right?
It's not really a heavy lift, though.
Okay.
I've got God watching my back. That's how I feel like I'm coated in armor to go against this guy.
Okay.
What makes me want to do this is I have 5 kids. And the Montana that they're growing up in is nothing like the Montana I grew up in. From top to bottom, for every socioeconomical stance.
Wow.
Safety wise, this is not Montana.
Okay.
And we're already, halfway to being Washington, California, Oregon, if we're not there already.
Well, we fled Washington, I think, to come here, and it's a lot better off but I can see if things don't stay on the right course, we could easily be what's happening on what I call the left coast, for lack of better terms. So, so what do you see maybe as the top 2 to 3 issues that we're facing here in Montana that you really think need to get dealt with?
Well, the biggest issue that no one wants to speak about because it's such a commercialized thing now and people are making money on it is the marijuana dispensaries. But people don't realize the ramifications that's having on our little state.
Yeah.
It passed by 56%, but that's because people were voting for the benefits. They weren't. 56% of people aren't cannabis users.
No.
There's little old ladies that have come up to me and said they voted for it because it was supposed to help the veterans.
Right.
Well, people need to realize that Montana and Greg Gianforte's rollout of cannabis is 4 times worse than Colorado. Okay, per capita, we have 4 times more dispensaries per capita than Colorado. We're approaching 400 dispensary stores for 1 million people. Colorado has 520 stores for almost 6 million people.
Yeah.
And with increased drug use comes the mental health issues.
Yes.
Comes the law enforcement issues.
Right.
Comes the homeless problems.
Yeah.
Wherever drugs, and I say that as a child growing up in Stevensville in the 80s.
Right.
Just say no to drugs. I'm the Gen X that said no drugs, period.
Okay.
That's why this is all Greek to me, how it's all of a sudden going from drugs are bad to saturating the market where it's been all of our schools.
Yeah.
Greg didn't think about our 180,000 kids that can't vote. Didn't think about our administrators that can't, deal with this, with our mental health professionals that are seeing the crisis firsthand.
Yeah.
And our law enforcement that has to deal with it.
Yeah.
And the increased drug use dovetails into the fentanyl and all that stuff.
Yeah, we saw that in Washington, and being a guy, I'll just leave it, coming out of the 70s, I understand all that really well. I'm not going to get into that story, but Yeah, living on drugs or being dependent on drugs
Yeah.
is not, I don't think that you can be a productive member of society
Yep.
and really achieve things, really be an influence. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to stop here in Montana. So what else do you
Well,
got?
just to touch on that, people don't realize it, and history repeats itself. We saw this with Oxycontin. That was supposed to be the miracle drug. Now everybody got hooked on it. You know, it made its way into the schools.
Mhm.
We had the opioid epidemic.
Yeah,
Then we saw it with the Juul, the e-cigarettes. You know, they were supposed to satiate people smoking. You know, and that was designed for 50 to 60-year-olds that wanted to quit smoking. But that,
Yeah.
like everything, people are evil at times,
right.
and that gets corrupted. It gets into the schools, and now we
Yeah.
see it with drugs, with the marijuana.
Yeah.
And I just, for the life of me, don't understand why people can't look back at history and just say, nope, we're not doing that, because there will be bad actors that will take advantage of this. And we're seeing it now with Ozempic,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
diabetes 2 medication. Look at
Mhm.
all these people that are losing all this weight. Well, that's the next health crisis we're gonna have, where people have pancreatitis, and it's
Yeah.
just, people just don't wake up.
Yeah,
It's-
we've kind of a drug saturated culture
Oh.
that give me a drug or medication to fix things. And
Yeah.
again, they don't see the
Big picture.
long-term effects. Maybe it's the projected or portrayed that the tax revenue from this is going to be
Yeah.
this. We saw this in Washington back in the early 80s, that the lottery was supposed to help fund education, and that didn't work out at
No.
all. What else is on the, I guess, on the hot plate for issues here in
Well,
Montana?
taxes are the biggest thing. Property tax, that's what I hear whenever
Okay.
we travel around.
Okay.
And your conservatives, we tried fixing that. But
Mhm.
you have to remember, there's only about 38 of us, you know, the 38 special in the legislature. You know, taxes, we could have reset that back to 2019 values before the COVID spike, before the COVID boom. We couldn't get that done.
Okay.
We could have used acquisition value. You know, what you paid for your house is actually what you should be taxed on.
Mhm.
Just because your neighbor has a $4 million house, that doesn't mean your house is now worth 4 million. You know,
Right.
you paid this, we couldn't get that done.
Okay.
That's because Greg, the Solutions Caucus, and the Democrats are all working in together, this cabal. They don't want to give that money back. You know, we had the tax surplus 3 times now that they
Mhm.
will not return to the people.
Okay.
So they're either keeping that money for Medicaid expansion in 2025.
Okay.
The legislature will have to deal with that. And I'm all for Medicaid for the kids and the
Mhm.
elderly. That's what it's there for.
Right.
But if people that can work need to work,
Yeah.
and
Amen.
they want everybody on Medicaid. So it's either for that, or they're trying to make things so miserable that we buy into a sales tax,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't want either. Being born and
No.
raised here, we don't need a sales tax if we get back to the 80s and 90s, where we used our natural resources.
Yeah.
I've got the charts that show our natural resource tax revenue. You know, in the 80s and 90s, that's where the bulk of our schools were funded from
Okay.
logging, you know, i.e. logging, mining,
Right.
fossil fuels,
Right.
natural production. Well, we've seen a precipitous decline in those revenues,
Mhm.
and that tax has now been shifted to the residential homeowners.
Yeah.
And that's not fair for elderly. It's not fair
No.
for, you know, in a perfect Tanner Smith world, I would like to see 60 and older retirees are tax exempt,
Okay.
because it's
Okay.
not fair to pay rent on a house to the state that you already own.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of things that we can do because we have such a big surplus.
Mm-hmm.
If we just get back to using our natural resources the way it was, not to
Okay.
be the old good old boy, but
Right.
the way it was in the 80s and 90s. And with using our natural resources comes fuel reduction in the forest, so we don't have these
Okay.
smoky summers.
Yeah.
It elevates all the areas over east. In eastern Montana, they're struggling with it because they have no infrastructure for the schools.
Mm.
You know, oil and leasing is completely shut down, and you know, Prairie County, Daniels County, Petroleum County,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all they have to rely on. They don't
Yeah.
have timber, they don't have
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
So we need to bring those markets back responsibly, and then everybody can, you know, take advantage of that tax
Okay.
revenue.
Yeah. We left Washington, King County. We were paying 10.1% sales
Yeah.
tax on top of everything.
Yeah.
So the fact that Montana has a state income tax but not local sales tax was a big plus for it.
Yeah.
Do you think the tax laws or how it's structured now is outdated?
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay.
But and the tax system is so convoluted, because I sit on House Tax Appropriations,
Okay.
and I'm a relatively intelligent person,
Okay.
but they keep it complicated for a reason.
Mhm.
So there's only a handful of people that know the ins and outs of it, and every
Okay.
tax bill is different, because you have conservation districts.
Right.
You know, when you drill down into it, your taxes are different than mine, and we could be neighbors, you know,
Mhm.
where we live.
Yeah.
The issue we have is, like, if you take Greg's property tax task force, those are the same bad actors that wouldn't give your money back the first 3 times.
Mm.
from the chairman of that board to all the people that he's handpicked to put on that, there's no conservatives on that whatsoever. So
Okay.
you're gonna get the same talking points regurgitated.
Okay.
And we're already seeing how Greg is gaslighting us by saying that he doesn't want a sales tax. What will happen in 2025 is the legislator and the rhinos and the Democrats who want it, they have the votes, so they will pass some form of sales tax. And then Greg has plausible deniability to say, hey, this is what the people wanted.
Yeah.
And it's just, I see it plain as day because I've seen it play out in the legislature.
Yeah. And we've seen it in a state that has one, is that, and I think it's so true, that once a tax is implemented, you got your foot in the door, it's never going to go away, and it's just going to keep stepping up, stepping up, because it's a revenue source for the government. Unless you've got a government that's really conservative and really wants to keep, that from being abused, it's kind of an open door.
Well, and that's why in my administration, I will dig my heels in on no sales tax.
Okay.
Because we have the money. The money is there to be had in our natural resource revenue.
Good.
We can do it better, faster, cleaner than any other place, especially India, China.
Okay.
That's
okay.
It's common sense stuff, but trying to convince people that somebody's paying for those freebies.
Yeah, it goes back to, I guess, economics 101, that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And there isn't, me and you've got work for stuff, and there isn't, somebody pays a cost. No, you don't get anything free. Tanner, what's maybe one other big hot button issue for you?
Well, the homelessness and the illegal aliens.
Yeah.
That's everybody. That's top of mind for everybody.
Yep. Myself too.
The homelessness crisis we have, people voted for Democrats, and this is what happens when you vote for Democrats. Housing prices go up, inflation goes up. These are kind of the growing pains. Maybe people needed this to wake up, to realize this is why we don't have Democrats. Locally, we can treat that homeless. Greg builds homeless shelters, and if you build it, they will come.
Very true. Yes, absolutely.
But we didn't have a homeless situation 30 years ago when I graduated high school at Stevensville. The men were supposed to work. We were all supposed to work. You were ostracized by society if you were an alcoholic or you were a deadbeat dad. The community came together and said, Brad, we love you, but you gotta provide for your family. We're not just gonna let you drink and have this revolving door at the shelter. As governor, there's a lot of policies I'll implement. If you're going to operate a homeless shelter, you will drug and piss test your residents. That's one way to dig our heels in and say, we all want to get these people well. We're all good Christians here. We want to help, but the homeless shelter leaders, they're non-government organizations. They physically can't say no. So we will step in at the state level and say, you will drug and piss test these people. If they pop positive, you will lose your 501c3 status. That's how we correct this ship. And we'll have carve outs for an alcoholic mom, that's a battered wife that's dealing with issues. But we know the bad actors we want to get out. They're the people that are our age. That go beg on the side of the street at Lowe's, get their alcohol, go back. Or in another issue is the needle exchanges. We're going to get that. Every one of your big counties have free needle exchanges. Just from a policy standpoint, that doesn't save lives, that just prolongs deaths.
And it encourages drug. I mean, it just, you bring that in. Seattle had these injection sites in that too. I mean, it doesn't solve the problem or lessen it. It brings more of those type of people in.
If you were to show me an AA meeting where alcoholics go to and they hand out shot glasses or whiskey flasks and say, hey, Brad, how's your sobriety going? Here's some shot glasses for you. It's just a bad policy. No one does that, but we're doing it here.
I got you.
There needs to be an adult in the room to step up and say, no, we're not doing that. Here's the reason why, because it doesn't help. It just perpetuates, aids and abets, this crisis.
Yeah. And I've seen it, the progressive policies where we came from Seattle, but Portland, San Francisco, LA, they're not working. They're, again, if you build it, they will come. They will. Seattle's spending around $100 million a year through next year on homeless. It's not getting better. So we've got to come up, we've got to deal with obviously the mental health aspect of it, the dependency issue, but there's also a high number of people, and I don't have a number for it, that want to live that lifestyle. And that's the type I think we have to absolutely say, we're not going to fund that or support that. You need to go somewhere else.
See, I was the bus ticket guy on the House floor, but we were debating, I think it was House Bill 5, about putting $5 million into homeless shelters and stuff. And I was the bus ticket guy that said, we'll take care of Montanans. If you're a resident of Montana, if you were born here, great. If you're a refugee that moved here, great. You're still a Montanan. We had a gentleman from Missoula that's homeless for 6 years. And that's what he touted, was that this is his lifestyle. This is what he wants to have. Well, those are the guys who are going to get a bus ticket somewhere warm, because we can't afford it. It's
No.
unsafe. You know, when Matt at Fuel Fitness was shot, I would have dropped the hammer via executive order, and we could do a whole nother show on executive orders that I'll issue to drop the hammer on these people, because when it becomes unsafe, when our citizens are getting murdered,
Mhm.
or our daughters are getting raped,
Yeah.
I would have done this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When the gal was raped in Missoula from the Middle Eastern refugee illegal.
Okay.
And that just dovetails into the illegal aliens issue.
Yeah.
I will drop the hammer on that on day one.
Good.
You know, you're
Good.
all leaving. Psh.
Yeah.
If the federal government won't enforce our laws, we can do that here via using our National Guard in plain clothes.
Yeah.
So the kids don't have to look at the military vehicles around, but our National Guard in plain clothes can round these people up. You know,
Mhm.
you and I in 4 or 5 of my buddies with a U-Haul could handle this problem.
Yeah.
You round them up, you
Yes.
get them out of our state.
Yeah.
The stabbing we just saw up in Marion, those are illegals.
Yeah,
There's
I've
15 that
heard
are,
that.
it's,
Yeah.
and these are easy policy things, because no means no, but you know,
Yeah.
running a state and it is no different than parenting. If you let one little thing go with your kids, pretty soon they're all expected
Yeah.
and they all get away with it because their sibling did. That's the same thing with, you know, enforcement of the laws. We can't
Yeah.
let the little things go.
No, that we pay for it as I will say ex-working, but working tax-paying citizens, that we shouldered the burden of these things. Again, I agree with you, are easy
Yeah.
if we, enforce the laws.
Super
You know,
simple.
I welcome, I'll just say, and I've said it, I welcome legal immigration,
totally.
but to just say, hey, come on in and we'll find a place.
Yeah.
We're seeing the crimes happen
Yeah.
when there's no,
In real time.
when there's no enforcement of laws. So,
Yes.
okay, Tanner, I'm with you on those issues. So tell me a little bit about what's your vision for Montana then? What would you like to see Montana be?
My vision of Montana is going back to how it was when I was, you know, grew up here.
Right.
And refugees like yourself that are great people, you don't realize what Montana could be. And I do, being born and raised here, you know, our summers were beautiful.
Mhm.
We
They are.
never locked our vehicles. You know, we never did.
Yep.
We've all had that panic when you stop at Costco and you're halfway across the parking lot and you have that panic. Oh my gosh, did I lock the car?
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah.
things that we never had.
Yeah.
We never locked our houses.
Yeah.
You know, and those are easy things. It would be nice to get even some semblance of that back.
Okay.
And I would like you guys that moved here to enjoy that freedom.
Yeah.
But part of the problem we have is a lot of people that have moved here, that's just the norm. We have different baselines.
Yeah.
That's why Greg Gianforte's baseline, being from New Jersey,
Mhm.
growing up around marijuana,
Mhm.
gangs, all that stuff, that's
Mhm.
different than my little, you know, baseline growing up in Montana,
Right.
where we had a utopia.
Yeah.
So it's so, you know, alien to me, this new Montana, because this is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Where people that move from other places, we love you, but your baseline's different. It's like, well, it could be worse.
It is.
It's like, but it could be so much better.
Yeah, it is. I told somebody yesterday at church, and we moved here to be part of the solution,
Yes.
not part of the problem. We're,
Yeah.
I haven't met anybody personally that's
Yeah.
come here that I say, yeah, hey, I want to make this like California, or we love Portland or Seattle. We
Yeah.
want that. But it's just this, I want to be part of the solution here. I want to keep our state the way it is. I want to live under less crime, less taxation, less government involvement in my life.
Totally.
And that's one of the reasons we came here. It became intolerable where we were at,
Yep.
to the point we picked up and moved here, and we're thankful to
Well,
be productive part of Montana.
and you guys are the ones that we want, because you've seen what happens.
Yeah.
Your block is actually my biggest supporters, because they've seen it in real time how things
Yeah.
go down the wrong track. And we're halfway there, if
Yeah.
we're not already, you know,
Yeah.
4 times worse with the drugs.
Yeah.
It's these are
Yeah.
all things that we can fix, but you have to have the testicular fortitude to fix it. And
I agree
do.
with you. I agree with you. So kind of to close it out here is, what would you say to people who are going to the polls
Yeah.
in November? They're going to vote for governor.
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't like to use the word pitch, but tell me why should people vote for you?
Well, people have a very easy decision to make this, you know, this cycle. Do you want Montana to become Silicon Valley? Because we're
Mhm.
halfway there.
Okay.
I'm your farming, ranching, ag, mining, you know, governor. It's going to get back to natural resources.
Okay.
Greg's your tech guy. So if you want to be a techie state, we can definitely do that. But you're going to become Silicon Valley, which will turn Montana blue. We've already seen it with Los Angeles.
Okay.
Missoula was already blue, but it's getting bluer. You know, he has the data center he wants to do in Polson, which it's a Bitcoin mining data center, which is divisive
Mhm.
from the get-go. You know, that's going to take 1.5 million gallons of water from our farmers and ranchers.
Right.
It's going to demand 1/4 of the electricity from Kerr Dam. We can go that route and have those policies, but it's divisive because your farmers and ranchers should come first. You know, we came to the dance
Mhm.
with them. Montana is the treasure state.
Right,
We need to stay at the dance with who we brought.
right.
That's the sales pitch is it's up to the voters. And I think the voters know in their heart that we want to see Montana stay with what it is. You know, we
Mhm.
can have the tech stuff. And I voted for some of the tech stuff, but only if it's not at the disadvantage of our farmers, ranchers, loggers, and miners. You know,
Right.
if you want a data center, then by George, you build your own nuclear plant or whatever to power it.
Mhm.
Don't start taking power from the grid that's already taxed, you know, or already being exhausted of the
Okay.
electricity.
Okay.
You know, my closing is being courageous is contagious. You know,
Okay.
I'm going against Greg Gianforte.
Mhm.
He's the billionaire. He has
Yeah.
the money, but I
Yeah.
have the message.
Okay.
And I will win because people realize that something's wrong.
Yeah.
When you drive around, when you're afraid to go to the gas station at 10:30 at night, when you go to Famous Footwear and everybody's not speaking English
Yeah.
in
That's a clue,
Kalispell,
huh?
Montana, that's the red flag that, hey, we need to get back,
Yeah.
you know, to get back to
Yeah.
being Montanans.
Okay.
So
Well, Tanner, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. I appreciate you
Appreciate it.
sharing. I
Thank you.
appreciate you, the leadership you're providing
Yes.
in the House, and look forward to your leadership in the governor's
Yeah,
office
that's
as
it.
well, too.
I appreciate
Okay?
it.
Guys, thanks for joining us today on my Monday leadership. Have an awesome day. Bye-bye.